Now that I can
Yeah.
hear you perfectly, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking time from your busy days to join us for today's webinar, focusing on discussing stewardship. And my name is Bill Petrick. I am the founder of Funding Matters. Funding Matters is a vertically integrated consulting and digital technology platform company serving the not-for-profit sector locally in Canada, with throughout North America and internationally. Our The vertical integration of Funding Matters incorporates several different aspects. One is about 20 years ago, we built out a platform called Giftabulator. Giftabulator is a platform that allows donors to see the affordability of their donations from stocks, mutual funds, registered investments for major gifts, transformative gifts, as well as from estate gifts. And within that structure, we started to well over 15 years ago, we were looking at how can we be taking websites and turning them into microsites, and those microsites converting them now over the last 4 years into vertically virtual reality spaces that your donors can actually go and incorporate their interests and find out things through your naming opportunities. And finally, we've developed a AI platform for actually helping your donors respond to a lot of the questions they may have around your campaign through immersive reality and through AI. But I am joined by my good friend, erstwhile colleague, James Murphy. And James, welcome to today's session. Just before we get into it, I think there are three objectives, James, that we had talked about that we want to focus on for today's talk. One is, how does your case for support, how does your mission, vision, values of your organization tie in with AI? And how do you find that fit for your donors for incorporating your messaging and your objectives to help your donors answer any of the questions that they may have? How do your donors immerse themselves in your space, and how do your donors actually feel that they're part of, what it is that you're constructing and providing feedback? Secondly, is how does that tie in with your marketing and your communications? Because we know that stewardship is central, and it's an ongoing thread that runs through the organization in terms of reaching out to your donors. And last but not least is, what might a framework look like to address what the questions that your donors may have and the messaging that you'd like to put in front of them. But James, when we start to think about this, what are your thoughts around, where stewardship falls into the pantheon of major gift fundraising, transformative giving, in terms of how to manage those individuals along a donor continuum?
Yeah, I think the stewardship is, everyone talks about it. They think it's integrated. But I think strategically, you're looking for donor connection. You're driven to raise more funds. You're under pressure to do that. Stewardship sometimes, I think, gets somewhat neglected. But people talk about building a culture of philanthropy that runs through the organization, but they really don't take time enough to, I think, define the budget, what it means for the long term to have those relationships. Just like planned giving, that can take 6 months, it can take 16 years to get to a planned gift. I work with a lot of planned giving directors, and I know what a long-term commitment it is. And I think if we start to stewardship in that same way as being integrated in the organization, maintaining those relationships, we can get to a point where it becomes a mechanism to move donors to a higher level. And I think we'll see some of that in later in the presentation.
Absolutely. So, I like to use this as a starting point. When we start to look at when maybe not when James got started in fundraising, but when I kind of went into it in the late 80s, early 90s, one of the things that we started to see is how technology was transforming the way we worked. And we went away from the selectric typewriter to small desktop computers to brick-like cell phones, and how over time, over the decades, how technology has transformed. But one of the things that, when I was just describing Funding Matters and being technologically vertically integrated with different platforms, that the sector has kind of evolved as well. There wasn't a charity that at one point in the 90s didn't have this type of a computer. They didn't have, in the 2000s, the disk drives, that were able to pack so much information in. I still remember when we were doing hard launches of our gift tabulator, we would have to actually go and do an install. And that started to, you know, uh, provide a different tool, a different skill, a different opportunity for donors for fundraisers and charities to have conversations with donors to illustrate the benefits of supporting their organizations. But as we kind of went through this, the phones got smaller, they got faster, the computers had more great graphics capability within them, and then it leads us to where we're at today. And as information technology goes, the integration of all of these different components ties into very nicely within the not-for-profit space within your organizations: marketing, communications, and stewardship. And those three things really tie in. And how do we incorporate technology? How can we be in immersing our donors within, on their platforms, on the tools that they're using to actually benefit themselves in understanding more about your organization without having to actually sift through papers and pages of a case for support or other aspects of
I think I think
agents.
there's good stuff, Bill. By the way, I think I see my first mobile phone in this picture, and it's not the one in 2010. I think there's another key point here too, is that your donors, your audience, are working in very sophisticated technology environments nowadays. In the old days, we were all enabled by technology. Now it's completely integrated into our lives. And I think when you look at the expectations that donors have for hospitals, universities, other nonprofits, they want to see things in a form that they're used to, and they want to see that same level of sophistication. So it's not just about what we can do, it's about how we can integrate that with donor expectations.
And to that point, we start to look at the next iteration of all of this, and this is an iterative process. When we look from the 1990s to today, every step of the way, we've been looking at how can we be incorporating this into our messaging? How can we be reaching more people? How can we be doing? How can we create more knowledgeable, informed donors and their advisors? And so when we start to look at this piece, the communication with donors is in many instances, it's one-way communication. And only when we can actually get in front of the donor are we able to have a two-way conversation where we can actually be learning more about the donor, learning what the donor's motivations are, helping the donors realize, what their legacies can be. And so this is an interesting area where, the unanswered question in the back of a donor's mind is the difference between them making a smaller gift or not making or not making a gift at all. In some cases, if we can't be answering many of the questions that the donors have and allowing them to actually speak freely about what it is and us listening through this process, that is also a very powerful tool because the other thing that we'll learn through all of this is it's next to impossible to actually figure out who our next donor is going to be. And but our ability to actually reach as many people as possible is the key to your organization's success. For one, a major factor. Most donors have four charities that they prefer to support. And if you're one of those four charities, this is this is an opportunity as well as this is a challenge for how can you be presenting to your donors? How can you be engaging with those donors? How can you be helping to answer those questions for those donors? So, we're always looking at how can we be expanding our reach? And, James, I know that, our conversations and the work that we've done together over the years has always been, how can we get donors to come to campus? How can they come to our building? How can they actually, learn about what it is that we're doing? And this is one of those areas that I feel that you have done well in terms of actually identifying and getting people to actually come to the hospital, to come to the hospital events, to have personal tours of campuses. But when we're starting to really, how can we be expanding that donor reach is, the opportunity that presents itself with digital technology, with our ability to actually get that conversation started and have that individual take the next step to become, more exposed with a greater understanding of what it is that we're hoping to achieve.
I think I hate to refer back to COVID, but that was definitely an inflection point. And everybody I work with now, it is harder and harder and harder. And I'm sure many of you have faced this to get those in-person meetings, to get people to come for tours for events. I've been working with my alma mater on a couple of events in February, and oh boy, getting the turnout was very, very difficult. So I think we've got with this immersive technology now that we're able to bring at least the initial conversation to the table and give donors some connection to some of the gift opportunities that you might want to present to them. But I think as we'll see, we can go much deeper than that as well.
So pretend this was your campus and up until now, having the opportunity of just having a snapshot of any one of these images and then sending them on to a donor. Our donors are primarily visual learners. They're looking at, what is there, what's around the corner, what's down the hall, what are the things that they can see for themselves and explore and create their own unique donor journeys. So the immersion of within these spaces is a starting point. The 3D walkthrough of what the facility would look like, with the hospital, with the home, what the campus, the classroom, the library, any one of those areas, it's an aspect of how can we be providing those types of tools for the individuals to actually take the next step. And then secondly is how can we personalize that experience? How do we take that, to the next level? That if we wanted to target a particular individual, we know that, to your point, James, where are the donors? They are spread out everywhere. Even if they're in the community, one of the greatest challenges is how can I get time with them? How can I be sort of sitting down and walking through something that looks like a farm field right now? And then how do we take that image, by taking that 3x4 foam core image that was created by the architect with various different iterations and renderings, but having that ability to actually demonstrate, for them in the comfort of their own home, that they can be doing this at their own time with their spouses, with their families, with their advisors, or anybody else, is a great win for them. It's a tremendous opportunity that, because we hear often, and James, you've probably encountered this with donors, the donor saying, oh, I don't have the time to actually to make my way over there. And so you're going to go over and see them, but you're going to be showing them, a static image that may not be, they might want to see what's there beyond those, three corners.
Yeah, and I think part of this enabling stuff too with the technology is even if you can't make that in-person connection, you've got the capacity to bring them into that experience right away with this. Great to use it in an in-person meeting. Barring that, particularly people are away skiing, people are at their country homes in the summer, et cetera, et cetera. This really gives you that tool to get the conversation going.
Right. Like it was, I'll share a quick story though. So there's an individual who has been very philanthropic to a number of projects. He's actually engaged us to do fact finding for him. But I sent him a digital image of a museum, and when he received it, because this is the first time that he has seen this presentation, but he saw it and he says, why did you do this? Like, who was, and this person is in his 80s. So he clicked on it, started to navigate his way through, and he was like, is this the final product? Is this what it's going to look like? And so all the questions that you really wanted to have with this individual were coming through in an email discussion going back and forth, which led to a texting back and forth, which then led to a phone conversation going back and forth. And this person is 3,000 miles away, and he's not going to be coming back for another 2 months. So, just to at least start getting that feedback of what is this? I'm not used to seeing the presentation this way, but it allows me to ask a lot of questions about the layout, the galleries, the spaces, the lighting, the content in the galleries. It's like, wow, like completely out of like left field did these questions come. But the fact was that he was in a position to actually now start playing around with this and give feedback. And that is worth, it's weight in gold, just to have that conversation to say, hey, can you check this out and go from there? That's where the impact of the interactivity and immersion comes into play. And this is the opportunity for us to start thinking about, how do we create that bespoke experience? And James, like this is an important aspect of, staff support, staff resources, and ROI.
Yeah, and it's really about when everybody's got resource constraints these days, they have budget constraints. How do you really give your team the tools that enables them to connect with donors? I spent in someone I'm coaching at a major hospital organization on the West Coast the other day. We've been talking about one donor for almost 3 hours in terms of several sessions just to get the strategy in place, to look at how we can personalize the experience. Very, very big possibilities with this donor. But even when you look at broader range of low-level donors, you're still going to spend a lot of time figuring out how to personalize that experience. I think with these tools you've got now, you can really help your team become much more efficient in thinking through ways to do that. And they can be little tweaks, they can be larger tweaks, but you can still bring that kind of experience of personalization to the donors.
I'm sure,
It's really about motivation. I mean, that's the whole key, right? It's how do you
right.
motivate them? Sorry, Bill.
No, it's for sure. And that motivation, I also look at it from the practical standpoint. You've got a donor and you want to show them something that eventually might have their name on it. And the ability to actually go back to the architect or go back to the, using the renderings that were provided by the architect and actually then trying to sign a form fit a donor's name in a room, on a building, on a wing, whatever it happens to be. That doesn't always turn out to look as slick as it could. But having the ability digitally, we can just actually go in there in the back end and just change things within minutes and then actually do a nice layout so that the donor sees it and they'll see, as you may have seen in an earlier slide, coming into the diagnostic imaging wing, and it's the Smith, MRI suite, and then Well, the Smiths would actually go, oh, look at, there's our name, and we can actually play around with the different naming opportunities that can exist. It's that time and convenience. If you had to go and then have it printed out on a foam core or whatever it would be, this is a really efficient way to actually move names around for the purposes of trying to find a naming opportunity giving level that ties in with the appropriate stewardship for the
Yeah.
individual.
Yeah.
So again, when we're starting to look at, oh, this is a great slide, James. Okay, so remember there was one hospital campaign that we're having conversations with donors, and some of these donors were past donors to the hospital, which was great, and we're like recognizing them. But a lot of the plates and plaques and names were in some utility closet, and they had come off the wall.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
it's just
I remember being in one hospital here where that exact thing was in process. I mean, they were doing all this work. So, you've got virtual walls now, you've got electronic walls, you've got e-walls and things like that. But you know, it depends on walking through and looking at it. You can always tell the fundraisers in a hospital because they're the ones sitting there reading the name boards, or at the symphony, they turn to the back of the program to look at all the donors' names. But this, I think, this connection where you've got a way to recognize donors on virtual plaques, wings, et cetera, and give them a preview of how they look is very powerful.
absolutely.
It's
And
also a
then,
lot cheaper.
yeah,
I mean, the bottom line is that this digital stuff is a lot cheaper and it's much more malleable.
and the beauty of actually having that donor's name on the immersive site is leverage for other donors. So your prospective donors, they'll see a familiar name of somebody who's already named something, and it becomes sort of oh, they did that. Hmm. And then it's a point of pride for the donor to actually, in many cases, be recognized for what they've done by their friends, by their colleagues, by their community.
Mhm. Who else is giving? Who's involved? These are key questions for donors.
Right, right. And you know what? On the AI piece, one of the questions that gets asked a lot is who else is giving? If they're willing to actually allow their names to be used, or it becomes a reference point to go back to the Advancement Development Office to actually have a conversation and say, you know what, I'd be interested in giving, and what kind of opportunities are there, and at these particular levels, and if there are availabilities at those levels or higher levels or whatever it may be. So this is another way to do it, but we always
And
talk
I think
about.
this is something else that you'll touch on, I think, later too. It's really about how do you motivate mid-level donors to higher levels. I mean, part of that is bringing them into this community of giving that you can illustrate through these tools.
For sure. So, look, here's another way to do it, and that's supporting staff. Like, James, how much staff are asked to do, undertake. Sometimes, staff leave, and the responsibility falls of the person who left onto the person who's already there, who has a full plate of things to do. And how can we be creating greater efficiencies? How can we be looking at providing that? And that's the tie-in with how technology, and I'm just broadly saying how technology can free up your team's focus on the other things, and where stewardship won't, can be integrated in every step of the conversation. And it's part of the cultivation, it's part of the planning study or feasibility study or case development, but it's how can the case be incorporated into a broader reach to send out to more people, and to actually be measuring the metrics about where who's clicking, where are they clicking, what areas are they interested in, what questions are they asking, because all that comes together to benefit the fundraising discussion. Anything on this for staff, James, that comes to mind in terms of?
I think it really just goes back to that question of empowerment. I mean, having these tools, I mean, I think back to, being a major gift fundraiser, and I think having these kinds of tools would just be the best thing ever.
It,
Um,
it,
Freeing
yeah,
up time, building relationships, being more thoughtful in your strategies with donors.
but I think it's the ability to bring the three then circles together.
Mm,
We've got marketing, we have communications, and we have stewardship. And how do those three come together to become a very powerful platform for the fundraiser, for the organization, for the volunteers to be reaching out to various individuals that they may be connected to empower them to be taking the next step as well.
yeah, and there's often a disconnect with the Marcom team and the fundraisers, and I think this helps to align that. I know it's marketing people, communications people, they don't understand what we do. Marcom people are like, what do these fundraisers know about this stuff? I think this really allows an internal dynamic to bring those teams together in the same direction.
Hey, we're all in it for this common goal. So,
Yeah, yeah.
it's at the platform. Now we know that every donor has got multiple organizations that they're supporting. And, helping your organization with your donors make decisions, more educated decisions amongst themselves, amongst with their advisors, wherever they may be, because the interest of a donor may change over time. They may be interested, have been interested over the last couple of weeks, months. We had an individual who just, again, materialized out of kind of the ether. He wasn't on any donor list. He wasn't on any particular uh, prospect. No one knew this person, but he appears and says, "I'd like to make a $50,000 donation." The $50,000 donation, then once he begins to actually see what the project is all about and the nature of it, he begins to actually understand that there are components that actually speak to him personally. And one of these is an area that his mother had suffered from dementia, and there was a memory care wing, and he was interested in that memory care wing. When he found out that it was a $500,000 memory care wing, he began to look at what some of the options may be to actually do something in his mother's name, as opposed to, just a general $50,000 donation. Long story short, he makes the $500,000 donation involving his accountant, his financial advisor, and it all comes together in like just under 2 months. So when you start to look at what's there and how to act, like the visualization, when he was able to actually see this and immerse himself and actually see that it was going to how it was going to help, how many people it was going to support, and what it was going to look like, really appealed to this individual. And this plays out over and over and over again in terms of cultivating that relationship, stewarding the discussions that exist, and how we can actually uh, go through this process to actually make it as convenient for donors as possible wherever they may be. It's always the unanswered question that holds a donor back from making that large donation. It's that question that lurks in the back of a donor's mind. And having the ability, in some cases, the donor may not feel comfortable in asking the question. They may try to go onto Google and search an answer for this, but when you go on Google, you get every answer. When you go on AI, and if it doesn't have the boundaries and you ask that question, you get every answer. But if you're a museum, if you're a school, if you're a university, if you're a social service agency or a hospital, one way or another, a long-term care home, if you can create the framework that allows your um, that allows your donor to actually explore and ask questions and seek answers and then go deeper and go deeper and deeper about your particular organization, they're going to be satisfied, more satisfied to come back and have a more meaningful conversation with you, and you where you can bring in the experts and the knowledgeable individuals, the expert witnesses that can actually, reinforce the rationale. Why are you doing this? Who are you doing the campaign for? How is it going to benefit? What's the impact going to be? Because those are all the questions in the back of a donor's mind. In some cases, talking about what their goals and objectives and vision happen to be are great, but utilizing the stewardship of the naming opportunities as well, that they can actually go and drop down and actually look for what those areas of interest may be. And when they go into those spaces, that's where they can actually learn about the opportunity, but more importantly, ask the questions specific to their areas of interest or knowledge that they're looking at obtaining from you as an organization. Anything to add, James?
Yeah, I think it really is very empowering for the donor because you have the opportunity of a conversation with them, but not everything gets covered. Time gets short. There's interruptions, things like that, and people reflect on those conversations. And having a way to go back and follow up that's much more personalized than just looking around at Google or your website is incredibly empowering. But it also, I think, as you're going to talk about shortly, provides your team members with it also empowers them with information because they might not have all the answers to all the questions. And when you bring in AI into this mix, I think you're able to build on the information that you can bring to the donor meeting as well.
Plus, your artificial intelligence agentic bot you will be able to see and understand what questions people are asking. Mm-hmm. So it helps you understand what you can be speaking to your prospects, your donors, your community about that are kind of timely, relevant topics for people to be considering, and for you to have sort of in your back pocket. So that becomes an important aspect of how you can be providing greater insights and information in the end.
Yeah.
Here's an example here's a beautiful facility, and in this beautiful facility, you've got somebody who's going to ride their bicycle around, but we would actually animate this so they could click here and actually go through a donor journey from that. But they're going to be looking at the space and they're going to be looking at naming opportunities. So, an idea of naming opportunities under $50,000. What are available? Now, in this case, it's going to say, this might be a situation where all the $50,000 naming opportunities have been selected. But the lowest now is a quiet reflection room at $100,000. I was looking for 50,000. I'm not looking to give $100,000. But if you're considering, and this is the response, if you're considering a gift under 50,000, there may be other recognition avenues that aren't part of the public naming list. So there's an opportunity here because this person just quietly wants to find out if there's a naming opportunity for 50,000. But the idea of getting connected to the foundation's donor relations team is one option. Here's the person's name, Sarah Mitchell. Here's her title. There's her phone number. There's her email. There's the hospital. That's, just confirms everything. We'd like me to connect you with Sarah, or we'd like a quick overview of the closest available naming opportunities above that level. So you can just go in there. Yeah, just, I'd like to find out some more, and what might those look like, or I'd like to talk to Sarah. And that becomes part of that type of, from a naming opportunity perspective, what might be available. But they can ask any other question. I'd like to find out, I'm coming in next week for my colonoscopy? And could you organize a parking spot for me? And the person would say, the response would be, well, we can't organize a parking spot, but I'm glad that you're looking after your health, care, and you're coming in for your examination. But there may be things that people are interested in, such as I have a nephew who's in graduating from high school, but he has to have 40 hours of volunteer experience. Is how can he or she become involved? So if we build the mission, vision, value, the narratives within the objectives of everything from volunteerism to parking to your campaign, but really being able to construct it in such a way that it really focuses on your organization, your project, your campaign, and the people who are intimately involved who can be providing insight and education about what the project is all about.
The name of the game, I think, in all of this really is engagement. This is the constant discussion that I have with people is more and better ways to get people engaged. And this just covers the gamut on it through that AI technology, through the ability to connect with you, for you to connect with them. I think it's very powerful.
Yeah, so like 5 years ago, we were playing with the idea of AI, and we built AI into called Phil, and Phil was a chatbot and still is a chatbot. But 5 years ago, when we were looking at Phil, we were really hoping that Phil could explain to a fundraiser, to a donor, to an advisor, the best ways to give. And basically, it would be either giving now through stocks and mutual funds, or registered investments, or estate gifts. And basically, in 60 seconds, to actually walk people through the different steps that they should be aware of to actually calculate an affordable gift based on appreciated assets that they might have. And that was sort of the starting point. So engage. So how do you get these, fundraising curiosities around, how can I be looking at tax efficient giving, and how can this digital platform? So Phil is, it was the chatbot, is the chatbot. Phil is short for philanthropy. So some of our clients have Gen, and that's Gen is short for generosity. But it's very interesting how from 5 years ago in building out AI bots to where we're at today in terms of interactive discussions with with a bot. Not only you can have it on your phone and you have a conversation, they'll have a conversation back with you, and it's kind of a really interesting way to actually get feedback and in knowledge and in information, and talk to James' point about engagement. But the second part is how does this fit in assisting you to actually be reaching more donors in a broader sense, so to bring them in to explore through immersive reality the objectives that you set for your fundraising, for the goals that you've set, the programs that you're hoping to support, the operations, the capital projects, the endowments, so on and so forth. And one of the things that everyone's always looking for is, what kind of impact will my donation have? And clearly being able to actually showcase the opportunity of seeing what something is going to look like, to actually immerse yourself in it, to go into those beacons and have those beacons open up for a gallery, for a room, for an operating theater, for a classroom, for a performing arts center or a museum. Seeing that and then going in and then immersing yourself and seeing that space, but more importantly, being able to actually understand why this is important, who's going to benefit as a result of it, and what kind of impact will your donors have? What impact will the donor have for your operations, whether it's capital or endowment or programming. So here's an example. And again, naming opportunities can be throughout. We can actually not only have it as a drop-down menu, but you can actually have, as you're going to come into the space, click on any one of those buttons and it'll take you to those areas of interest. And so once you go into it and you actually enter into the reception area, it'll take you there where the naming opportunities will be made apparently available. And you can actually see and take a navigate around the corner and see where the bistro would be or any other spaces. But clicking on this, you can actually go back on the lower level here. You can see, and you can go back to the panorama and look at the floor plan and all the other naming opportunities that would be there that they could click into. And in this situation, you would have a description that would take you from the MRI suite lobby, and you'd see what the naming opportunity would be, and you'd actually go into that through that naming opportunity, and it starts to play a bit of a narrative. So instead of taking the case for support for this particular area or for any of the other areas, now it's all digitized and immersed. And so the individual can, with their mouse or their keypad, can actually start to navigate around this space. And as it's going through the view of this area, it's explaining through, you can have this as your CEO, the chief of staff, the president of the organization, lead volunteer, the chair of the board, where they can actually be incorporated in delivering the message to those individuals. So it becomes another aspect of your communications, marketing, and stewardship that actually helps achieve this. And this is, going back to this, you can actually click on any one of these and it'll take you to those specific areas, and they'll have the same beacons in those areas that allow that narrative to once again take place. That integration, that ability for immersion, that they can ask any questions about the spaces to explain that importance. So when we're looking at, what we're trying to achieve, we want to have more presentations. We want to be able to actually integrate this so that the conversations, that you will have, you can have them with a donor, whether they're 3,000 miles away or, 3 feet away at a Tim Hortons. Just being able to actually have this and visualize this and give them inspire the excitement that goes along with it, and provide the tools for you and your team to actually, and your volunteers who are your team as well, to actually be able to confidently have and make presentations that donors can see themselves in. Taking the opportunity of what kind of events that take place is, through walkthroughs. Just picture yourself going to a service club and making a presentation at a service club or a gathering of people, and this goes up on the screen, and you can actually be walking everyone through so that they can see for themselves, the impact of it. Something that we started, 20 years ago in terms of building a website for our capital campaigns that we're doing for the endowment campaigns. We knew that they needed sites, and this was very in the very early days. It was still Web 1.0. Today we're at Web 3.0, and so the microsites that we were developing 10 years ago are now 3D, 4D with sounds and sights, integrated into it with with images, whether they are off of green screens or incorporating with individuals, that are augmented along these lines, so that they could be speaking to the elements of within your case for support, within your mission, vision, values. And then the last but not least is, how does this all tie back to the importance of communications, marketing, and stewardship? Because this is the tool that helps, this is a platform that allows, the named opportunities, the the auditing of the named spaces on the back end so that you'll always know who gave to what, how much they gave. So not only is it front facing for the donor, but on the back end, the stewardship piece is that, with staff turnover over many years or decades, new staff come in, and sometimes there isn't that repository for the information for the new teams that come in about who gave what, when they gave, and having something on the back end of a with a repository that allows that information to be stored is gold to organizations, because we've all run into situations where we've had a conversation with a donor, and the donor is interested in naming the elevator, and they're going to give 300,000 to name the elevator, which is great. And then you go back and you start to look, and somewhere, somehow, somebody tells you, oh no, that elevator was already named by such and such a family like 10 years ago. But there's no record of it. It was just like in somebody's institutional memory that was at some point, something that was named. So that causes a lot of embarrassment for yourself, embarrassment for, and, really, the donor isn't thrilled about it, because this is something that, they were kind of presented as a need and as an opportunity to give. And I'm sure that 300,000, I know that 300,000 was a lot more than what was given 10 years before that. But now you've got another situation that you have to work your way through. And I'm sure each and every one of us has encountered something similar to that. But that was one of my one and only instances of working with an organization where I came across that. But these are things that are important, and auditing and having that type of record keeping is an important part of stewardship as well. So anything to add to that, James?
I'm just thinking about how, how this impacts how we do our work. I mean, these are extensions of things that we do now, but I think bringing this technology into it is an opportunity for us to reflect on really how we do this 360 stewardship, including major gift presentations and events and microsites that you have listed here. But it's an opportunity for us to think about how we can become more impactful, more efficient, and also providing donors with experiences, which is what it's about, is bringing them into the experience of things. And you're doing this virtually. It might not be as warm and fuzzy as walking through a construction site, but in many cases, it's going to be the door opener or the closing act of a major gift. And it also goes to how you motivate donors, as I mentioned earlier, from those mid-level gifts. I mean, you get people excited about something, not by talking about it, but by showing them something, showing them an experience. So people who are at the $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 level that have greater capacity, this I think helps raise the bar to that, so that they can see what their impact could be with a bigger gift.
Excellent. So benefits, clearly, having that visualization component, ability to actually put an individual's name on a space, or how this can be shared very quickly within seconds with family members, advisors, doing it remotely, increasing that, how the funds are going to be used. Also, on the transparency side, it's going to cost you less. The ROI will be greater for the donor, and seeing how their funds are going to be used through the editing and digitization. And then ongoing recognition. So not only will there be recognition within your facilities and your rooms, gallery spaces, whatever it may be on the building, but also it'll be there in perpetuity digitally, so that this naming and how it can be used as well, to make it a lasting format for the benefit of the organization, the donor, and the community as a whole. So I want to thank James once again. Your contributions are always tremendously insightful. But I also want to thank each and every one of you for taking time to spend this hour with us. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I really appreciate your time and your interest in this area. And next webinar is in a couple of weeks, and our focus is going to be on building better donor conversations using AI. And this is really right up James's alley as well, as a master coach, trainer. Uh, we've created a practice partner called Builder Bill. And Builder Bill is there to actually run scenarios and coach you, and you can practice on Builder Bill as opposed to practicing on the donor. So it's a really cool thing, and I hope you tune in for that. Looking forward to it. So we'll be joined by one of our AI experts as well on the panel for that session. So thanks ever so much. But if there are any questions, please please either ask or feel free to ask now, or you can just follow up with us as well. And once again, this presentation will be shared with you, and the PowerPoint presentation will be made available as well for you to share with your team as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.